After injuries, here are top 40 running backs, and at the same time, I have to talk about a running back trade I just made that I feel very bad about. But tier 1, we have Barkley, Bijan, and Breece Hall. Obviously, you start these guys every single week. Go over to flockfantasy.com. They are the top 3 players in my rest of season rankings as well. Rest of season, I would prefer Bijan and Hall over Barkley, but Barkley does have the best matchup here going up against the Falcons. Now, tier 2, start all these guys every single week as well. We have Gibbs, Kyron, Taylor, Achane, Henry, and Mixon. Now, I want to be clear with a couple things. With Devon Achane, he's probably a little too high in these rankings. Obviously, dealing with the ankle injury, we don't even know if he's going to play on Thursday night. I just want to be very clear with these rankings here that if Devon Achane is active, he is in your starting lineup. You have no Raheem Mostert on Thursday night. I don't know exactly how large of a role they would like to get Jeff Wilson Jr. and or Jalen Wright. So just make sure if Achane's healthy, he's in your lineup. This should be a high-scoring game, and I think Achane should have almost everything as a receiver if he plays. Now, the other guys with Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he'll actually be improved another week removed from this injury. Great matchup against Tampa. With Kyron Williams, the main thing to look at will be the offensive line play, but good matchup against Arizona, and he had pretty much every single touch last week. Looking at Jonathan Taylor, we're hoping that you have some more receiving usage out of the backfield this week. Derrick Henry, y'all know I'm not a big Derrick Henry fan. We said it 1,000 times, but has declined for 3 straight seasons. Won't catch the ball to the backfields. It's turning 31 in January. Like, very clear avoid. But this week in particular, an absolute smash against a Raiders team that is currently the largest underdog according to Vegas sportsbooks of the entire week. And then Joe Mixon at 9. You could very easily make an argument to have Joe Mixon higher than this. I think you can move him all the way to the top of this tier if you want, coming off a game where he had 30 carries, and this being a phenomenal matchup against the Chicago Bears, where Tony Pollard was just able to actually go through and perform. You have an applied team total of 26 points against this Bears defense. With Mixon, though, I did recently say in a live stream that I didn't view him as a true 3-down bell cow the way that we do with Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall. I know a lot of people had issue with that, but if you look at the underlying snaps, Joe Mixon's not playing on 3rd down. Joe Mixon's not playing in the 2-minute drill. That doesn't mean he's not going to catch the ball. He's still going to catch the ball on early downs. But I just want to be clear, you can move him up inside this tier, but for the love of God, don't be comparing him to Barkley, Bijan, Breece Hall. Now, dropping down to our next tier, Isaiah Pacheco, definitely somebody you're going to start going up against Cincinnati. The Chiefs are actually heavily favored in this game. Clearly, the Bengals are starting a little slowly. You have a bunch of drama going on in Cincy. James Conner at 11 is my RB1 in the Flock League. Phenomenal matchup against the Rams, where right now this projects out to be one of the highest scoring games of the week, if not the highest, with an over-under of 50 points. We saw it based off the week 1 usage that you're not going to have any Trey Benson early in the year. I still think that Trey Benson's going to be a factor at the end of the season. So if you look at my rest of season rankings on flockfantasy.com, you will notice that James Conner is lower than where he is at this week. Rachaad White will be our next guy at 12. If you are looking at Rachaad White, I know Bucky Irving was the more efficient back. I know people are claiming that Bucky Irving's a better running back. I think it's way, way too early to say that. With Rachaad White, he's going to have every single target out of the backfield as well. Should be a decently high-scoring game against Detroit. I will say this offense, however, does take a step backwards. Now, Jordan Mason at 13. Obviously, I'm ranking Mason here, assuming that you have no McCaffrey. Right now, it looks like McCaffrey's a long shot, according to Ian Rappaport. You're going up against Minnesota. It is a phenomenal matchup where the Niners should very easily win this game. They should very much be looking to run the ball in the second half, similar to what they just did against the New York Jets. And we saw against the New York Jets that Jordan Mason had absolutely everything as a rusher. Now, Kyle Juszczyk did actually have the usage as a receiver, and I will stand by the reason that Jordan Mason is just a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 for me in fantasy in a full PPR format is he's not going to catch the ball. We saw that week 1. We've seen that through his entire NFL career. I believe now he's up to 4 receptions through the first 3 years of his career. It would be different if he was a great pass catcher at Georgia Tech, but he didn't catch the ball at Georgia Tech either. So Jordan Mason, very good first and second down player in one of the best offenses in the league. Low-end RB1, high-end RB2, but do not mix it up. He's not McCaffrey. Travis Etienne at 14 with Etienne going up against the Cleveland Browns. I mean, last week, you actually had the Browns favored over Dallas with an incredibly low implied team total for the Dallas Cowboys. It looks like sportsbooks are not giving the Cleveland Browns defense the same credit that they did last week, where now the implied team total for the Jacksonville Jaguars is actually up to 22.5 points. Be very important to monitor the usage that you have here with Travis Etienne versus Tank Bigsby, because Bigsby did have a decent role in week 1. Kenneth Walker will be our next guy at 15. I think you can make an argument to have Kenneth Walker ahead of some of these other names from a rest of season perspective. And I don't want to say it's a great matchup going up against New England. Obviously, New England, bad offense, pretty decent defense. But right now you have an implied team total about 20.5, 21 points here specifically for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a game where they should be able to win against the Pats. They should be able to run the ball in the second half. Definitely want to be monitoring the abdomen injury for Kenneth Walker, however. And then Alvin Kamara at 16. Clearly, the New Orleans Saints look like they're one of the best offenses in the entire NFL last week, but that's because they went up against a JV team. They went up against the Carolina Panthers. Now, they're going over to varsity. They're playing the Dallas Cowboys, and sportsbooks are not giving them any respect. They're putting an implied team total of only 19.5 points for the New Orleans Saints. I think the touchdowns come down dramatically. To be honest, if you go and look at the underdog pick'em of Alvin Kamara, I'm probably a little too low on him in these rankings. Right now, Underdog has Kamara for higher, lower, 83.5 total yards. I'm just very worried about this Dallas matchup. But if you want to go check out that pick'em or any other pick'em this week, you can find that link to Underdog Fantasy in the description and comment section. If you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus. Plus, you are going to be getting a free team review from yours truly in a live stream through flockfantasy.com. Also, code FLOCK will you a CeeDee Lamb special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard. Underdog's also dropping a special surprise promo on Friday, college football pick discounts on Saturday, and NFL pick discounts on Sunday. So make sure you take advantage of that with the link in the description and comment section and use code FLOCK so you get that free team review. Now, dropping down to our next tier, this is when you actually have to have some start-sit decisions, right? James Cook will be our next running back at 17. With James Cook, plays on Thursday night, same player that he's been throughout his entire NFL career. He's the starting running back in a great offense that's going to catch the ball to the backfield, and you would be very excited about him being in a great offense, catching the ball to the backfield, because we would assume that he'd have a lot of opportunities in the red zone. But the issue is Josh Allen, 15 rushing touchdowns last season. Josh Allen, multiple rushing touchdowns in week 1. That looks like for the time being, that is not changing. Now going over to David Montgomery at 18. David Montgomery had an incredible role week 1. David Montgomery went out and played an insane amount of snaps, looked great while doing so. But, and this is what we talked about with the issue with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs looks like he is going to get used at the goal line. Now, it's not all Jahmyr Gibbs based off what we saw with week 1, but Gibbs will steal some of these touchdowns from Montgomery, and Montgomery doesn't have any receiving upside. So Montgomery does kind of become a touchdown or bust player. Now keep in mind, he is playing in one of, if not the best offenses in the NFL. The Detroit Lions yet again have the highest implied team total in the NFL this week with 29 points against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Massive spread on this game. They should be able to go out there and run the ball comfortably in the second half. So I think Montgomery is a solid mid RB2 in a full PPR format, but you're kind of relying on that touchdown. Now, Jerome Ford will be our next guy at 19. With Ford, bad offense in Cleveland. Deshaun Watson looked like absolute garbage, but he is going to get every single touch out of this backfield. And at the same time, he should have the reception upside. And then Josh Jacobs at 20. You actually have Jacobs projecting out to be in a worse offense than Jerome Ford this week with Malik Willis under center. I am terrified. I don't want to start any Packers receiver for damn sure. I think you have to move Jacobs down dramatically in your rankings this week. Head over to flockfantasy.com. You will see I have Josh Jacobs in my rest of season rankings much higher than where he is this week in particular. But you have an implied team total of 18.5 points against Indy. I think that this is a team that's probably trailing in the second half. This is a very low scoring offense with Willis under center. So I am just trying to avoid where we can. Now dropping down to our next tier. Ramadre Stevenson is a running back that I have in the Flock League. I am really hoping that Ramadre Stevenson repeats what he did last week. Going up against the Seattle Seahawks, there's not a massive spread on this game. This is a spread currently at about 3 points where the Seahawks are favored. We saw Ramadre Stevenson last week look phenomenal. He was the entire offense for the New England Patriots. But a couple different things here. One, you had Antonio Gibson coming off an injury. 2, this was a situation in which Ramadre Stevenson was up the entire game and had the perfect game flow. Am I expecting going into the future Ramadre Stevenson and the New England Patriots to be winning games from start to finish? Not at all. I think Gibson will have a slightly larger role now that he is healthier. Like, remember, we didn't even know if Gibson was going to be playing last week. And this is a game where the Patriots probably trail. So I really hope that I'm wrong with this ranking. I really hope that Rachaad Stevenson and the New England Patriots offense, they surprise from week 1 through the entire end of the season. But I still think this is one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. I still think they have some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL. So I'm still very much worried about Rachaad Stevenson. Now going over to Naji Harris. It's going to be one of the very few games where the Pittsburgh Steelers are straight up favorites by a decent margin here as well. Going up against the Denver Broncos, Naji is clearly the RB1 in Pittsburgh based off last week's usage. Now, Jaylen Warren was coming off the hamstring, so naturally you'd assume that Jaylen Warren does expand his role a little bit in week 2 here. And what I was a little concerned with at the same time is you had the usage regarding Cordell Patterson. So if Patterson is going to be used, and this is kind of going to be a 3-man running back by committee, I am a little worried about Naji if you do see the expansion of the role for Jaylen Warren. Aaron Jones at 23. I know Aaron Jones was much better than this last week, but we have to look at the overall game environment last week versus the game environment this week. Last week, Aaron Jones went out and pretty comfortably was winning the entire game. The Niners offense looked very good against one of the worst defenses in the NFL, one of the worst teams in the NFL with the New York Giants. This week, it's going to be a very different situation. This week, they arguably go up against one of the best teams in the NFL, and they are currently 6.5-point dogs. So this is a situation that, yes, I would be very scared to go out there and play Aaron Jones. I think it's going to be a much worse game environment, even if Jones did crush last week. Now, Tony Pollard, similar situation here. I mean, you can see we have Stevenson, Jones, and Pollard all in the same tier for a reason. Last week, the Tennessee Titans went up 17-0. And what we saw from this usage is we saw Tyjae Spears was the clear 2-minute drill running back. Tyjae Spears was the clear 3rd down running back. And Tony Pollard was the 1st and 2nd down grinder. In a game where the Tennessee Titans are winning from almost start to finish, obviously at the end, things got a little out of hand. But in a game where the Titans are winning the majority of the time, that's going to be a good environment for Tony Pollard. Now, going against the New York Jets, I do not expect that to be the case. Going up against the Jets are currently favored by about 3.5 points. We already heard this coaching staff say that they're planning on actually splitting the backfield a little bit more between Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. So I think this is a much worse situation for Pollard than it was a week ago. Now, dropping down to our next tier, Zach Moss does appear to be the starting running back in Cincinnati. Coming into the season, no idea if it was Moss, no idea if it was Chase Brown. I was fine drafting both because I still think this is a Cincinnati Bengals offense that has upside. Now, obviously, everybody is full-blown panicking about the Bengals right now. They're 5.5-point dogs going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, it's the Chiefs, so I don't think that means everything. But, I mean, I go to Instagram Reels, and every clip I see is, oh, Joe Burrow holding his hand weird. Oh, Joe Burrow picking up a water bottle weirdly. Everybody's spazzing that Joe Burrow is not the player that he was before. Everybody's spazzing that this is not going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. And this is that tough matchup going up against the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense made Derrick Henry look straight up washed. Do I think Derrick Henry is 100% washed? No, I think it's just a very tough matchup that you're going to have here. And while it looks like Zach Moss is most likely the guy in Cincinnati, I think you could wait another week to see what the usage looks like between Moss and Chase Brown just to get confirmation. Now, Brian Robinson Jr. will be our next guy. Brian Robinson Jr. versus Austin Eckler, I mean, kind of looks similar with the box score last week. But if you look at the usage, particularly at the beginning, it looked like it was Robinson's job. Right now, you actually have the Washington Commanders going up against the Giants. So this will be one of the very few games that you have where Brian Robinson is actually favored. And you want Brian Robinson in a game environment where the Commanders are able to be winning, where you actually have them grinding it out with Brian Robinson on 1st and 2nd downs. Because while Brian Robinson is for sure going to be used as a receiver, we saw that last week. If the game does get out of hand and you are in obvious passing down situations, at that point, you are going to see a little bit more Austin Eckler. Now, looking at this, I think I have made a mistake here. J.K. Dobbins is too low in these rankings. J.K. Dobbins has a phenomenal matchup this week going up against the Carolina Panthers. You have a 23-point implied team total here for the Chargers. They should be a much better offense this week than what they were previously. And if you are looking at what you have with J.K. Dobbins last week, Dobbins comes out and he is everything for this Chargers offense. Gus Edwards is super inefficient to the point where I think we could expect Dobbins to continue to expand his role, Edwards to continue to actually scale back. Dobbins was used on third down. Dobbins was used in 2-minute drills. So I think you are looking at Dobbins with the usage that you want. It looks like he has the juice. It's the absolute perfect matchup. I will be very interested to see when Underdog does put out some of the pick'ems that you have with J.K. Dobbins and what his higher lower is when it comes to his yardage. But let's move this over and go to Ezekiel Elliott. So it does look like right now Zeke is more likely than not the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. It is an okay matchup going up against New Orleans. Obviously, Carolina looked, horrendous against the Saints, but I don't want to be overreacting. You look at actually what you have with Las Vegas sportsbooks. They're putting the Dallas Cowboys with the 26-point implied team total. So I think this is a situation where, Dallas should be able to score the ball with relative ease. I don't want to just go jam in Ezekiel Elliott right away, though, because I do want to practice some patience, similar to the Zach Moss situation, and just confirm that Dowdle's not going to be someone we have to think about. Now, DeAndre Swift will be our next back at 29. If you are looking at DeAndre Swift, I started him last week in the Flock League. 0% chance that I do that yet again. Scored 5 points for us. The guy's lucky I didn't cut him to send a message to the rest of my team. Going up against the Houston Texans, this is a very bad game environment for him. Right now the Bears are about touchdown dogs to the Texans. It's probably a situation where Caleb's going to have to drop back to pass a ton in the second half. Now, good news for Swift is Roschon Johnson was a healthy scratch week 1. I will be interested to see if that's going to be the case again in week 2, or if Roschon being a little bit healthier maybe is active, and maybe this is a 3-man running back by committee. Now, going over to RB30, Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to be here. Now, I want to stress this is a ranking as if Devon Achane plays this week. Obviously, if Achane is out, in that case, Jeff Wilson Jr. not only jumps to the top of this tier, not only does he jump Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, Naji, but I think if you have no Achane, Jeff Wilson Jr. can rise as high as RB21 and would look like a must-start player. Now, definitely not viewing him as an RB1 just because you're looking at Jalen Wright more likely than not splitting this backfield and keeping it as a running back by committee. I don't think that Jeff Wilson Jr. is a phenomenal player. I think it's a toughish matchup going up against Buffalo. So Jeff Wilson Jr. is about running back 30 if Achane does play. If Achane doesn't play, he jumps up to RB21 and probably somebody that you do need to start. Now, dropping down to our next tier, this is where I'm just going to take my L right now. Okay, so I'm going to let y'all know I got swindled. I traded for Javonte Williams. Yes, it is disgusting. I regretted it the second that I made the deal, and I wish I could go back on it. I sent essentially Amari Cooper and a player I just picked up off the waiver wire for Javonte Williams and Hollywood Brown. Now, double flex, full PBR format, blah, blah, blah. And the reason why it is so bad, if you look at Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin had a larger role than Javonte last week. It's a horrendous offense. This week, they have a 16.5-point implied team total going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Absolutely terrifying. He's on my bench, so I'm hoping that something positive happens. I'm hoping Bo Nix looks a little bit better. I'm hoping that Javonte steals a little more from Jaleel. I'd still rather have Javonte over Jaleel rest of season. But I'm telling you right now, I very much regret that trade, and I'm sorry for anybody who's rooting for me in the Flock League, because I think I kind of let y'all down with that one. Austin Eckler will be our next guy at 32. Decent game environment going up against the Giants, where Washington should be able to move the ball down the field. But you kind of want Eckler in those games where the opposing offense is going to put up a ton of points. That way Washington has to throw the ball a ton, be in obvious passing down scenarios, and I think that's a little more Eckler's job over Brian Robinson's. But full PBR format, you should have some safe receiving usage. Jaylen Warren will be our next guy at 33. If you are looking at Warren, week 1, it was a disaster. Not only did he have a tiny role, but like we said, Cordell Patterson got involved as well. With that being said, he was coming off a hamstring injury. I think that you most likely have Jalen Warren a little more involved in week 2 than he was week 1, but still not somebody that I'm super excited about. Chase Brown will be our next running back at 34. Obviously, he does look like he's second fiddle in Cincinnati at the moment. I definitely drafted a lot more Zach Moss than I did Chase Brown in underdog drafts. I didn't take either in the Flock League, so don't really care there. But I'm hoping that Zach Moss just continues to go out there and dominate. The issue is, it's 1 week. We have such a small sample size. Chase Brown is the younger player as well. I think that there's still a chance that Chase Brown has a role in this offense. Tyjae Spears here at 35. Yes, everything was Tony Pollard last week. But with Spears, I think this game environment against the Jets will be a little bit better for him. For Tyjae Spears, I think he's going to be a lot better in game environments where the Tennessee Titans are trailing and they're in obvious passing down scenarios, because it does appear that that's going to be Spears' role for the time being. Devin Singletary will be our next guy at 36. If we are looking at Devin Singletary, he is the full-blown starting running back in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So I don't see what the upside is. We said it all offseason. If Saquon Barkley couldn't get it done in New York, what makes us think that Devin Singletary can? Drop me down to our next tier. Rico Dowdle. I don't know. Maybe he still has a decent role here in Dallas. Very difficult to just say based off week 1. We know exactly what the split's going to be between Zeke and Dowdle. Chuba Hubbard at 38 will be in a running back by committee with Miles Sanders in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. A 16.5 point implied team total. In a committee, I want nothing to do with you. Zamir White will be in a running back by committee in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. A 16-point implied team total. Alexander Madison has the third down role and the 2-minute drill role. Zamir White, you're banking on touchdowns in an offense that won't score that many. Gus Edwards at 40. Gus Edwards, super inefficient week 1. J.K. Dobbins looks like he's the freaking dude, and Gus Edwards won't catch the ball to the backfield. Jaleel McLaughlin, really bad offense. I am now, I guess, on the Javonte Williams train, so I'm hoping nothing happens with Jaleel here. Hopefully, Javonte just takes over. And then our next tier, Justice Hill. This is going to be a game where the Ravens blow out the Raiders. You'd want Justice Hill in a game where the Ravens are trailing. Alexander Madison at 43. Madison could definitely continue to climb these rankings. I mean, he definitely shot up in my rest of season rankings on the site. And then Tanks Bigsby at 44. Tough matchup going up against Cleveland, but also another running back that is moving up my rankings in a dramatic way on the site. But really do appreciate you. Really hope that we were able to help you out here. And a reminder, go take advantage of those special promos they have going on Underdog Fantasy. You have the CeeDee Lamb special pick'em, more than less than half total yard. Plus, you have the surprise promo on Friday, the college football discounts on Saturday, and the NFL picks discounts on Sunday. I'm not any good at pick 'em, but I made over $200 week 1 just because I took advantage of the promos. Find that link in the description and comment section, and make sure you use code FLOCK so you get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you will get a free team review from yours truly on a live stream through flockfantasy.com. Just make sure that you signed up to flockfantasy.com with the same email address that you signed up to Underdog Fantasy with. That way I can go through and I can manually credit your account with that free team review. But that's all I got for you. Really do appreciate you and really hope I can hang out with you after the game tonight.